want to say something about that.
Okay, this is Frank Pergola, the famous DeMeo detective who also did a lot of other guys. I'm the Darkness Underneath, Quentin Walker, and I'm going to be interviewing him today about the history of the Colombo Crime Family. All right, you ready to start, Frank?
I'm ready. I just want to say a few things. I want to bring people up to date as to what happened prior to Joe Colombo's murder in 1971. And that would go all the way back to the 1950s when the Italians were migrating to New York City from Italy, and they all settled in Mulberry Street in Lower Manhattan. They brought with them many criminals from Italy who were in the organized crime organizations in Italy called the Black Hand, which was going to be the mafia later on in the United States. Uh, this was similar to what's happening in our border now. I mean, criminals are coming across our border with regular people, some regular people, but there's too many gangs, too many MS-13s, too many terrorists coming in. Back then, it was organized crime people coming in with Italians and bedding themselves down with them so they could make money from them as they were trying to support themselves. At that time, uh, Italy was sending bosses over to oversee their organized crime uh, activities. And they first sent a guy named Massaria, who was a boss in Italy, and they sent him to the United States to oversee their criminal activities. He didn't work out too well, so Italy ordered Lucky Luciano to kill him, and he did. So Luciano goes to Italy and finds out what they want to do, and he comes back with another guy named Maranzano. Now, Maranzano went the same way that Mazzaria went. He tried to make his own money and was putting money in his own pocket instead of giving it to the organized crime people. So they ordered Luciano to kill him too. At that time, Anastasia was running wild with this Murder Incorporated, killing everybody in sight. So now we're in 1957. Carlo Gambino arrives in the United States with Lucky Luciano, and he takes control of these people that were running this Black Hand organization. And he creates the five families and the mafia and the commission. And what he does is he makes the five families and puts himself in charge of the Gambino crime family, Vito Genovese in charge of the Genovese family, Joe Bonanno in charge of the Bonanno family, Lucchese in charge of the Lucchese family. And when he gets to Profaci, he splits the leadership between Joe Profaci and Joe Gallo and Carmine Persico. This starts wars in 1960 to 1969. Gallo was trying to take control of the Profaci crime family. So it was Gallo going after Profaci, and Gallo going after Persico and Profaci. And then when Profaci dies, Gallo's going after Persico and Colombo. This war existed for 9 years. And as that war is going on, in 1965, I was assigned to the 7th Precinct in uniform. I was there about a year, and I'm stopping a lot of cars on my post, which my foot post was 9th Street to 20th Street on 5th Avenue in Park Slope. So one evening, I'm doing a 4 to 12 tour, and I'm walking my beat, and this Cadillac pulls around the corner, and I stop it. Didn't look right to me, so I walk over the car pulled over, he complied to what I wanted. And I said, license registration. So he pulled it out, and I read the driver's license. It's Huey McIntosh, who I know is Carmine Persico's bodyguard. And I look in, and I'm sure. I said, you got some ID on you? So he gives me, I think it was a driver's license. Whatever it did, it said Carmine Persico on it. So I said, all right, well, do me a favor. Both of you step out of the car. Give me the keys. So they did. They got over by the curb, walked on the sidewalk. I opened the passenger side of the door, checked the glove compartment under the seats. There were no weapons. I searched them before I did that, and they had no weapons. So I gave them back the keys and said, have a nice evening. And I walked away from them, and I saw their car pull away. Now, Gallo is got his whole crew, which is about 50 associates, all hanging out on President Street in Red Hook, Brooklyn. That was their headquarters. There was Joe Gallo, Larry Gallo, Al Gallo, and about 50 guys. And one of them was named Armando. He was a little midget, and Joe Gallo had a pet lion. I don't know where he got it, but he had one. And Armando used to walk the dog up and down President Street and chase people that didn't pay their loan shark and loans, and
They called him
intimidate them to
Mondo the
pay them.
midget.
Excuse
They
me.
called him Mondo the midget.
Mondo, yeah, Armando the midget.
I don't think they
That
like
had to
being
be
called
that
midgets
had to be a
anymore, but
funny. That had to be a funny scene. This little guy walking with this big lion in the street. Uh, anyway, from
little
1965 to
mustache.
1969, now the war really heats up. Gallo is trying to take what he believes to be the Colombo family or the Profaci family. He wants to take it over. He feels he deserves it because he killed Anastasia, and so Persico thinks the same way. So I mean, so now you got Profaci and Persico attempt to kill Larry Gallo. This is between 1965 and 69 when it really got hot. Then Persico is shot by Gallo and survives. And then Gallo kidnaps Profaci and Colombo, and somehow they get released. Now Profaci is really pissed, so he orders the murder of all the Gallows. Now, at the same time, the New York City Police Department was pretty upset about the 34 murders that was going on between these two guys, Gallo and Persico. So the chief of detectives assigns a detective to each member of Gallo's crew. They have to stay with them daily to gain intelligence and to provide protection so they don't get killed. Now, in 1969, Colombo was the boss. Profaci had passed away, I believe. Joe Colombo and a patriarchal family from Boston negotiate peace between Gallo and Persico. The war is ending. Gallo has to go to court and he gets convicted. He gets 14 years, but he's out in 3. So he's out in the street in 1972. Gallo is celebrating his release from prison in Umberto's Clam House in Lower Manhattan, in Little Italy. And as he's exiting the restaurant, 3 or 4 shooters converge on him, full of bullets. Thank God nobody in his family got hurt. They jump in a getaway car and they take off. So that's the end of that part of that war. But then again, it starts up again in 1980. 1980, it starts again. There's a new boss in the Colombo family by the name of Vito Arena. And this war that lasted 13 years caused 14 murders. In 1991 to 1995, I was assigned to the Brooklyn South Homicide Squad as a homicide detective, and we handled 16 of those 40 murders between Arena and Persico, along with the normal receipt of murders and those investigations. We were kind of busy. We were only two teams of four detectives working. Two teams worked day tours, two teams worked night tours, and one team worked midnight to eights, which we called the night watch. In 1993, the war ends again. The two main shooters for Persico were Greg Scarpa Jr. and Larry Mazza. They both went to court. They got convicted and got life for all the shootings they were involved in. But they got out early in about 26 years, just like Joey Testa and Anthony Senta in 2024. Nothing any different. Greg Scarpa Sr. had his own crew. He worked for Persico. And they called him the Grim Reaper. He loses an eye in a shootout with another crew from Marina, and he loses an eye and he contacts AIDS. Now, Greg Scarpa Sr. is known to be an informant for the FBI for decades. Everybody knew it. Even Dominic Montiglia knew it. He worked closely with an FBI agent by the name of Linda Del Vecchio, who was his handler. She testifies in a grand jury in Brooklyn about meetings between Greg Scarpa Sr. and Del Vecchio in her home every week. Scarpa and the agent would discuss crimes. Scarpa gives the agent money and jewelry for information on four people that he, in his association, that he believes are talking to the FBI. That results in 4 murders. Kings County DA Joe Hines indicts the agent in 2007. But later on, has to dismiss it because he finds out about a conflicting statement that Shiro made to a crime reporter for the Daily News by the name of Jerry Capisi. Capisi said in 1997, he interviewed her, which is 10 years before this grand jury indictment. And she said that Scarpa didn't have anything to do with Linda Vecchio. That was 10 years before this. But Hines had no discretion on this. He couldn't sustain a successful prosecution, so he had to dismiss it. Now, in 1978, Joe Colombo had his headquarters on 86th Street and 15th Avenue in Brooklyn, in Bath Beach. That headquarters was located inside Cantaloupe Real Estate Office on 86th Street between 15th Avenue and 7th Street. This headquarters was in the vicinity of my apartment. My wife and I used to shop on 86th Street between 15th Avenue and 14th Avenue, where there was a bakery, a deli, and a butcher. We were there daily. I mean, I walked my dog from 15th Avenue to 14th Avenue, and on the way, I passed 3 organized crime clubs: Gambino Club, Cantaloupe Real Estate, and on the corner of 14th Avenue and 86th Street was the 19th hole. Was a capo for the Lucchese crime family, owned it, and I walked my dog to the park there.
You lived next to Nino Gadgi too, didn't you?
First, you had Nino Gadgi's Veterans and Friends, and then you had Cantaloupe Real Estate, and then on the corner of 14th Avenue, another block away, you had the headquarters of the Lucchese crime family.
You live near Cropsey, right? Where you lived near Cropsey, right? Didn't
Yes,
you live
I
near
did.
where?
Well, no, that was much later on. That's
That was
after I
later on.
bought a
Okay.
house in 1976. I lived on 16th Avenue between
Okay.
Cropsey and Shore Parkway. All right. So
Mecca of mob.
Cantalupo's son, uh, was an informant, and he gets shot in Atlantic City, but he survives. In 1969, going back a while, Mario Puzo wrote a book called The Godfather. It became the bestseller for years. Mario Puzo wrote that book and described the Corleone crime family and Corleone's three sons, which was actually Joe Colombo and his three sons. The book really was not good for the Italian people, but it was a bestseller. Colombo at this time was the boss of the Colombo crime family. The commission meets with Colombo about the book, about a pending movie that's going to be based on a book, and his activities in the American civil rights movement, which he was sponsoring. The commission wasn't happy with Colombo's involvement in these things. The commission, the singer Frank Sinatra, and the Congressman Mario Biaggi all contact Colombo and tell him they would like him to stop this movie from being produced. Colombo goes out and hires Mickey Cohen from the Jewish Mafia to threaten the Paramount producers. So Mickey goes ahead and blows the windows out of a producer's car with a shotgun and takes a Godfather's book, takes a dead rat, puts it inside the book, and lays it in one of the producers' beds. In 1971, Colombo's at a rally for the Italian American civil rights movement and is shot and killed by a guy named Johnson.
Jerome Johnson or Jeremy Jerome Johnson, is it?
It
I think
was
it's Jerome.
Jerome Johnson killed him,
Jerome.
and somebody shot Jerome right after he shot Colombo. This is all because Colombo didn't stop the movie and his activities in the Italian American civil rights organization, which was bringing a lot of attention to the commission. Your
Did
questions?
Joe Gallo have anything to do with it? Did Joe Gallo have anything to do with it?
From what I hear, Joe Gallo might have ordered it, yes.
Okay, go on. I'm sorry.
All right, that's about all I have on the Colombo crime family right now.
Okay. Well, that was definitely informative. So you did encounter Scarpa at one point. He died apparently died in 2019. Scarpa, you encountered him at one point. Scarpa, Carmine the Snake.
Yeah, on Fifth Avenue with Dewey McIntosh. You mean in the car?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. That's interesting. He died in
Yeah,
2019.
it was interesting. It was interesting. In the middle of the wars, they didn't have weapons in the car.
Yeah, that's really interesting. He didn't have it smuggled or anything.
Maybe I just didn't find them.
Gotcha. Yeah. I certainly wouldn't have been going around with just one bodyguard and no guns. That's for sure.
Yeah, well, in the middle of the wars, and it might have been 7, 8 o'clock at night, and he's driving around in Park Slope, which is not too far from Red Hook, where Gallo had his headquarters.
I know Gallo. I think Gallo might have been held up at one point because they were outnumbered by a lot. So that might have been why he was driving around without a gun.
Yeah, but don't forget, at that time, the department assigned the detectives to walking the streets with them.
Yeah.
The time that those wars was so active, and so many people were getting killed that the city of New York ordered construction in the streets to rip up the streets of President Street and really put a stop to the Gallo crew.
Wow.
This might have been even after Gallo died.
So, how would you describe Joe Gallo? Like you said, he wasn't. They call him Crazy Joe? Was he really that crazy, or was he just pissed off because he was getting?
He had that reputation since he was a kid, Crazy Joe Gallo. But he thought that he was going to take over the Profaci or Colombo Crime Family because Carlo Gambino had given him the contract on Anastasia, but it was him and Persico. So they both thought they were going to do it. And those wars lasted a long time because of that. And Persico still tried to, after Gallo was killed, Persico still tried to take over again in 1991, from Vicarina. Uh, and that caused 40 murders, 16 of which we investigated in the Brooklyn South Homicide Squad. It was a terrible time. A lot of murders during those years.
Wow. Yeah, those numbers
And you
would
know what?
humble a serial
There was
killer.
a shootout. I don't know if it's the shootout that Scarpa Senior lost his eye, but there was a shootout between Joe Waverly's crew. Joe Waverly was with Arena, and by the way, it was Gotti backed Vic Arena, and they were in that shootout. A 14-year-old kid. It's in the park on Avenue U. A 14-year-old kid, innocent kid, gets killed, and a Genovese soldier who had nothing to do with the wars gets killed.
Yeah,
So,
that's too
I
bad.
mean, they took some innocent people too.
Yeah, that's too bad. Um, so Scarpa, when you're talking about Scarpa, there's Scarpa Senior and there's Scarpa Junior. Scarpa Senior died of AIDS.
Yes.
Scarpa, and he was the Grim Reaper, and the one that lost his eye, and then Scarpa Junior is the one that went to prison for a long time, and they just let him out.
Yeah, he did 26 years, but he's out in the street right now. He's alive and breathing, I believe.
Yeah,
And
it seems like they let everybody out.
Larry Mazza wrote a book.
Is he still alive?
Larry Mazza? Yeah,
Yeah.
he's still alive. Like I said, he wrote a book. He had a
Okay.
podcast going for a while, but I don't think it did too well.
The only one I think I've talked to besides Pete LaFrosia was oh trying to remember his name. He was a Gotti guy. He's got his own podcast. He's actually very nice, I think, but it's hard to believe he's a mobster. Um, we'll remember his name in the future podcasts. He ended up becoming an informant. I see
Was
when
this
I'm talking to
another
mob, when
person
I
that went
talk to
up?
a mob,
This was
what's
another
that?
person that wrote a book.
I don't think he's written a book. I'll remember his name later. When I talk about mobsters, if they're a cop or an informant, I mean, if they're a cop or if they're an informant, I'll use the word informant. If I'm talking to a mobster who hasn't snitched, then I use the word snitch. So I use different labels for it depending on my audience.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of who it might be, but I can't. It's not coming to my mind either. We can talk about this again.
Yeah, we will. Okay, so for next episode, I was thinking we'll talk about gas pipe, Anthony Castle gas pipe. And then for the episode after that, I thought maybe we could talk about your DeMeo contributions because I know people are always wondering, did he kill 200 people? How many people did he probably kill?
Well,
I go into some of it in my book.
when we talk about gas pipe, we're going to talk about his relationship with DeMeo and one of the biggest marijuana importations into this country by a group of
Shrimp boats.
4 organized crime families. We're going to talk about that.
Okay, that sounds great. All right, I think this should be enough for this episode. I will. I'm going to stop it here.
Are you going to cut off the recording?
I'm talking to the audience right now. I'm talking to the audience, not you.
Okay.
I'm going to stop it right here, guys. And you heard for next episode, it's gas pipe. Real diminutive psychopathic killer. I'm not making fun of his height. I'm sure there's short guys out there, nothing against them. But very, very vicious guy in about 5'6" frame.